Welcome to Stand Up for Kids 2020, the Care Center's first ever virtual event. I'm Shelby Lynch, Director of Education at the Care Center. I want to start by thanking you all so much for joining us virtually tonight. We have an awesome program and an incredible guest speaker lined up. First, we want to thank our generous event sponsors tonight. This event would not be possible without your support, so thank you so much. Before we get started, I do want to briefly mention a few housekeeping items. First, we will be asking for donations tonight. There's a link to donate in the Zoom chat. We've also emailed out a link to donate via your registered email address. Next, as both a potential trigger and parental guidance warning, our guest speaker tonight will be discussing the topics of grooming and child sexual abuse. Finally, our guest speaker will stick around after the hour for a live Q&A. So submit your questions in the chat throughout the program. So let's get started. For those of you not familiar with our organization, we are Oklahoma County's only child advocacy center, and we are committed to preventing child abuse through education and helping children find their voice and begin to heal after abuse. Since 1991, our primary function has been to coordinate the investigation of child abuse cases in Oklahoma County, alongside a multidisciplinary team of dedicated community partners, including law enforcement, DHS, and medical and mental health professionals. It is our goal to reduce trauma, provide streamlined services for children and caregivers, and supports the healing process. In 2017, we launched our prevention education programs that provide both adults and children the tools they need to identify and prevent child abuse. This is what my team and I get the pleasure of doing every day, and it is an absolute joy to have this job. If you're unfamiliar with our education programs, I am so excited to tell you about them. Our Recognizing and Reporting Child Abuse and Neglect program is designed to give any child-serving adult the tools needed to recognize the possible signs of child abuse, and it takes the fear out of reporting suspected abuse to the proper authorities. Our program for kids, ROAR, teaches children ages 4 to 8 how to protect their bodies from potential abuse. We want every child in Oklahoma to know that they have bodily autonomy and the right to say no if any situation makes them feel sad or scared. If you don't know the rules of roaring, here's what Oklahoma's children are learning. Through ROAR, kids learn that R, remember privates are private, O, okay to say no, A, always talk about secrets, and R, raise your voice and tell someone. It is our hope that through the ROAR program, kids will know how to keep their bodies safe and will remember the rules of roaring should they encounter any situation that makes them uncomfortable. For a young boy in pre-K to know that he doesn't have to give someone a hug if he doesn't want to is empowering. And for a first grader to know that her body is her own could make all the difference. We hope you're looking forward to tonight's program. And now I'd like to introduce you to a huge advocate of our prevention education services, honorary board member and Oklahoma First Lady, Sarah Stitt.
Thank you, Shelby. I am First Lady Sarah Stitt, and I am so happy and honored to be here with you all tonight. I got involved with the Care Center because their mission is very close to my heart. Child abuse affects the lives of many Oklahomans, including previous generations of my own family. The Care Center does the important and hard work of providing the resources that a victim needs, all under one roof. Not only do they provide excellent care for the victims, but they have an extensive education program that teaches children how to recognize and report abuse. I believe this is one of the most important aspects of the fight against child abuse. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce you all to our guest speaker, Gwen van de Paa, who will be joining us tonight from her home in Holland. Gwen is a Dutch filmmaker who studied film in Holland. She holds an MBA from Stanford and worked for the renowned consulting firm Bain & Company. During her time at Bain & Company, Gwen began directing Groomed, a documentary that follows Gwen's own story as she travels back to her home country of Holland to confront her past and decide whether to report the man who sexually abused her as a child. In the film, Gwen reaches out to other survivors, psychological experts, and even a sexual abuser. The film addresses what grooming is and how to recognize it and how to stop it. Tonight, Gwen will discuss with us the heartbreaking topic of sexual abuse, because that is what she experienced. But it is important to note the Care Center serves children who have suffered all types of abuse. And with that, here is the trailer for Gwen's documentary, Groomed.
My name is Gwen. I consider myself lucky. I live in San Francisco, have a job that I like, great friends around me, and a wonderful boyfriend who I want to build a future with. But it seems impossible. I need to confront what happened in my childhood.
Most kids are molested by people that they trust. That is how it happens. And the grooming is what makes it possible.
I liked him, and I would tell him I liked him. And he became my best friend.
He makes the child feel that the child is a part of it.
How can I wake up at night now being terrified? Even though back then I was like, all right, let's go into the shower, let's just go do this.
All of a sudden, something relatively minor will happen and set off this flurry of anxiety and depression and flashbacks.
No!
First of all, you have to pick the right child. Who do I think I could train?
En dat ik je blauwe lingerie met mijn tanden mag uittrekken.
And I would think, oh, somebody likes me.
I was a con artist.
I call it soul murder, when you rape a child.
What she's describing is post-traumatic stress disorder, which is so common.
I found so many others with stories exactly like mine. He gave me a ring, flowers, fragrances,
Plane tickets.
lotions, ice cream.
And he raped me every day.
To truly understand grooming, I needed to explore the mind of a sex offender. I always wondered, do I want to report my offender or do I not? Do I really want to ruin his life?
End it. You'll feel better.
I know I need to go back to where this all began. I need to talk to my family. And I hope I can find the courage to report.
Hij is gearresteerd.
Can you test those for DNA? We are looking for a private investigator for my case. Grooming happens in almost all cases of sexual assault. So we need to understand. These sex offenders know exactly what they're doing, and so should we. We're about to find out whether the DNA lab found DNA. Let's do it the Dutch way and get straight to the point. Good evening, everybody, and thank you to the Care Center for the invitation to speak tonight. It's my honor to partner with such a wonderful organization on what I think is a very bold but critical mission to fight child sexual abuse. Now, you just watched the trailer of my movie Groomed, and you probably have a hunch of what I want to talk to you about tonight. I want to talk to you about grooming. And I don't mean getting your hair done or waxing your eyebrows. I mean the process that sexual abusers use to lure in their victims and to make sure that they stay quiet forever about the abuse that's happening to them. So unfortunately, I was a victim of grooming and sexual abuse myself. But for 20 years, I didn't know I was a victim of grooming because I had no idea what it was. I'd never heard of it. And when I did hear about it, it actually became the key to my healing process. And that's why it's so important to me to share with all of you what grooming is, why it's so important, and why it fundamentally changes the mind of the survivor and why it has such an impact in the long term. So there are three things that I want you to remember tonight from this speech. The first one is grooming is extremely common. In pretty much every case of sexual abuse, grooming is a part of the process. Two is grooming has a long-term lasting impact on the psyche of the survivor. It's not just a short-term means to an end. It has a profound impact that lasts for a very long time and sometimes forever. The third, more uplifting thing I want you to remember is that it is possible to heal from sexual abuse, and it's also possible, I believe, to prevent it from happening. And so let me start by telling you my story. I was abused by my assistant swim coach, and he always told me that he fell in love with me the first time he saw me, which is when I was 11. And I must say, to be honest, I didn't look at it as abuse at the time. I really liked the attention he was giving me. I liked him. He was a good guy, I thought, and he was giving me gifts and telling me I was beautiful, and everybody seemed to like him. I didn't think there was anything wrong. And then after about a year, these are often pretty long processes, after about a year, things turned physical. And that's when I got really confused, and I wasn't sure what was happening. I didn't know what was going on, but I also didn't want to say no because I cared for this guy. I trusted him more than anybody. He had isolated from my family at that point, and I wanted him to continue to like me. And so I let him abuse me multiple times a week in a handicap shower in our pool. Now that continued for a few years until I was about 14, and I actually developed an eating disorder and was no longer able to swim. And so I stopped going to practice and the abuse ended. And then I forgot about it, which is one of the most difficult to understand things about the human mind, is you can forget things like these after, if they're too traumatic. And so I forgot until I was about 17 and I started dating my first boyfriend. And because of my experiences with him, I was triggered and I started to get nightmares. I got panic attacks and I didn't really know what was going on. But surely and slowly but surely, the memories started to come back. And I think I started to realize, also with the help of therapists, that what happened was abuse. But I still didn't see my abuser as an abuser. I didn't see him as a bad guy. I still thought he made a mistake. He didn't mean to do this. He didn't mean to impact me in a negative way. He must not have meant it that way. Now, fast forward 15 years. This trauma continues to play a big part in my life. I'm unable to build healthy relationships. I have trusting issues. I have a lot of PTSD, panic attacks. I can't really seem to let it go. And so I start to talk to more therapists and experts about the topic. And I'll tell you a little bit about what a conversation with those experts would often look like. I would tell my story and they would ask, "Did you report him?" And I would say, "No, I didn't report him because he's not a sex offender." And they would say, "Why do you say that?" And I would say, "Well, this was always about me. He was obsessed with me. I'm convinced he would never do this to somebody else. So I don't need to protect others by reporting him." And experts would all say, "Well, yeah, but that's just a grooming process. That's grooming." And I didn't know what that was. And so after it came up a couple of times, I decided to look it up. What's this grooming thing? And from the first time I read an article, I still remember, it was an article by Jim Tanner about the steps of the grooming process. It was like my whole world changed completely. Suddenly I could look at what happened to me and see that actually he wasn't a good guy that made a mistake, but he was somebody who was quite sick and did something very deliberately to me, and something that wasn't my fault. So actually after 20 minutes of reading that article, I considered, or a very small part of me, but still, I considered maybe reporting him, which I hadn't done ever in 20 years. And so it had a very profound impact on me. So because it had such a profound impact on me, I want to make sure that other people know what this is. So let me tell you about the 5 steps in the grooming process. First one is targeting. It's picking the right child. Abusers, I've spoken to many of them over the course of making this film. They tell me you have to pick the right kid. You have to pick the child that you can befriend, that will trust you, and especially, most importantly, the child that you think will stay quiet. And so it's often a vulnerable child. Maybe their parents are going through a divorce. Maybe they're being bullied in school. For some reason, they have a lack of affection or a lack of attention that they're longing for, and so they're a good target. Step 2 then is befriending and gaining the family's trust. So in my case, my swim coach would always go up to my parents during matches, and he would laugh with them, joke with them, asking them lots of questions about me, and tell them how talented I was, and that he wanted to give me private lessons. And so they started to really like and trust him. So when we started to spend more and more time together, they thought he was just supporting me and helping me with my talent. I'm a terrible swimmer, by the way, but he had convinced them that I wasn't. And so they trusted him around me. Then the third thing is building that relationship that I talked about. So they'll start filling the gap or the need that child has for affection and attention by giving them gifts, writing letters, words of affirmation, and really making the child feel very special. Then the fourth step is sexualizing that relationship. And again, it can take a long time from befriending to actually anything physically happening. But when it does happen, the child often is confused about what is going on, but won't say anything about it. And then the fifth step is maintaining that control. So making sure again that the child will stay quiet. And part of those the first 4 steps already do some of that, right? If you've isolated the child from the family, you've befriended them, you've become the center of their world, they're probably not going to say anything to begin with. But a lot of the time there's little threats added on top of that to maintain the control. So for example, they'll say, if you tell anybody, you'll lose me. I will never speak to you again. Nobody will believe you. It's things like that have a profound impact on the survivor. Now, like I said, this had a deeply profound impact on me when I learned about this grooming process. And it was like everything suddenly fell into place. And it's also when I realized, why did I never know about this? Why didn't anybody tell me, even though I had years of therapy? Why did nobody tell me about this process? Because it would have helped me understand what had happened to me and start taking back control of my own mind. But I didn't know. And so I realized I want the whole world to know about grooming and the impact that it has. And that's when I turned on the cameras and started filming. And that's when my movie Groomed was born. So I want to talk to you a little bit more about that second thing that I want you to remember, which is the profound and long-term impact that grooming has on the mind of the survivor. And the way I always talk about this is up until a couple of years ago, I was living in what I call my groomed mind. So a good way to describe that is when I would look at another survivor story, and I talked to hundreds of survivors in this process, I could listen to their story and they would say, I feel so guilty about what happened. And I would look at them and think, how can you feel guilty? Clearly, he is wrong here. You did nothing wrong. You are a victim here. And absolutely what he did to you was wrong and was criminal. I could clearly see that. Like probably most of you look at these cases. It's black and white. It's easy to see. But then I would look at my own case and I would start to find all kinds of excuses. It was different because I never said no. It's different because he really wouldn't do this again. He was such a nice guy. It doesn't count. And that's that groomed mind that would come into play. And I think the most important thing for you to remember is what grooming does is it leads to confusion. It confuses your mind about right and wrong, about your role in what's happening. And that confusion is pretty all-encompassing. And it really starts to take control of your mind. And I want to show you a clip actually from my movie now that will show you some of this confusion and what it looks like. And so this is a clip. I'll give you a little bit of context. When I found out what grooming was, and I had set off on this mission to film my own story, to be able to tell the world about grooming, I decided to go on a trip to the Netherlands, which is my home country. And I went to my hometown where my parents still live to confront my past. And my abuser had always given me plenty of letters, and I decided I wanted to look and see if they were still at my parents' house. And I didn't know if they had maybe found them or not, or thrown them out. And so this is what happened next.
So I'm gonna go upstairs and see if the letters that the guy wrote me like 20 years ago are upstairs. And I don't know if they're there, and I don't know what's gonna be in them if they're there. And I'm just really nervous to see if there's stuff in there that I don't remember, and I think there's pictures there too. So they're in that bottom drawer, I think. This one's empty, that's bad news. I'm afraid that they threw them out. Oh my God, it's all empty. They cleaned it out, it's all gone. Take a moment. I don't know if I want to read them. I don't. I'm worried it's gonna confuse me. It's gonna confuse me. I'm worried he's gonna say all these nice things and then I'm gonna question it again. This was really short, so maybe it's good.
Dear Gwen, I've known you for 2.5 years now. You know that most of the time I've had very special feelings for you. That I would do anything for you. That you can come to me with anything, no matter how big or small the problem. I want to solve everything for you. Gwenny, look at your beautiful eyes, your sweet, beautiful, innocent face. Put your soft arms around me. Surrender to what you're feeling. It wasn't just that little ass that caused my little spark. Also, that playful wrestling made my desire grow. The thought of you makes my whole body tremble.
It's so gross, it's so gross.
I just want to wake up next to you in a single bed on Sunday morning. I just want to take off your blue lingerie with my teeth.
I I remember liking what was in them. Now I'm disgusted by it, but I remember thinking, it's so great, all these things he's talking about, like, you're so beautiful, you're so, when you do this with your mouth, you're so blah, blah, blah. When you do this, you look so cute, you look so innocent, you look so, it's disgusting. So, but back then I would read it and I would think, oh, somebody likes me, you know? First of all, he would send me postcards like this. And he's an idiot. He clearly didn't know what he was doing. You wouldn't write all this stuff on paper with dates on it if you know what the hell you were doing. I don't think he knew that he was doing something wrong. He doesn't. He still doesn't. And that makes me sad. It's like, he's just a sad soul that, like, fell in love with an 11-year-old and now I'm gonna, like, ruin his life for it. That doesn't feel right, you know?
Now, I still find it very difficult to look at this scene, actually. When I watch it now, I think, gosh, how can you be so confused when you read these letters? It's so clear cut, it's so clearly wrong. But I very clearly see my groomed mind still at work in that scene. Me saying things like, he didn't know it was wrong. He still doesn't realize it was wrong. That's very much that groomed voice talking. So in the past 3 years when I was filming this documentary, now when I watch the film, everybody will see different things, right? Some people will say I learned the grooming process, other people will see whatever it is. But I watch this film, I see my mind go from a groomed mind to an ungroomed mind. For me, this film is a process of me becoming ungroomed. And one of the and it's because I'm learning more and I'm talking to people and I find a bunch of relics from the past and they help me put things into place. And so one of the things that happens is I find my anger, and that's a big part of the ungrooming process, is that suddenly you start to see the abuser for what they are and you get mad. And it's actually a really, really nice feeling because it's so much better than being confused. And so I want to show you another clip where you can see me angry, pretty much for the first time.
I'm thinking of prison, the bars, and these crazy guys that are there. I mean, all these things went through my head. And I get a call, and I'm thinking, who is this now? I answered it, and it was my step-granddaughter, who's the one I molested. She says, Grandpa, you know, I'm sorry that I had to get you in trouble, you know. I mean, see, the lies I told her, she was actually feeling so much guilt because of that. You know, she was apologizing for, you know, doing the right thing.
Het is er niet.
Baby, er is een ander slachtoffer.
Wat dan, wat dan?
Er is een ander slachtoffer.
Wow. Wow. Jezus. Oh. Ik ga even zitten. Hoe weet je dat?
Schreef een berichtje op Facebook.
Wat staat erin? Hoef je zijn naam niet te zeggen hoor.
Gwen. Via kwam ik bij een door jou geschreven artikel over grooming en door bij je website The Movie terecht. Ik ben heel erg geraakt door je verhaal. Ik zwom destijds ook bij. Ik neem aan, misschien volkomen onterecht, dat het op naam gaat. Ik denk dat niet alleen omdat jullie hecht waren, maar ook omdat die gast bij mij meerdere malen veel te ver is gegaan. Waarschijnlijk in vele mindere mate met wat jij hebt meegemaakt, maar wel zo ernstig dat ik er als puber vraagteken heb gesteld bij zijn totaal grensoverschrijdende gedrag. Ik herken zijn grooming gedrag en hoe dat wederom in mindere mate ook wat op mij kreeg. Godver. Ik denk dat meerdere volwassenen zijn gedrag destijds misschien slechts in stilte hebben bevraagd. Lieve Gwen, ik wens je alle succes met het maken van je film en je leven in San Francisco. Het is ontzettend dapper en nodig wat je doet.
So like I said, in that scene, which still I find quite emotional to watch, it's in that scene that I find my anger for the first time. Now, I don't want to spoil the film too much for you, but what ultimately happens is because of this anger that I find and because of this ungrooming process that happens, I am able to report my abuser after 20 years. He gets arrested, but unfortunately doesn't get prosecuted. The case gets dismissed because of a lack of evidence. So I lose the legal battle. But what I do win is the battle within myself. I finally am able to let go of that groomed mind and I'm able to start the healing process, which ultimately is so much more important. And that actually takes me to the third point that I want you to remember. It is possible to heal from sexual abuse. Many people think you're stuck with it forever, and you are always, of course. It's always going to be a part of you. But it is possible to go through that healing process very successfully. And I actually think it's possible to prevent it from happening in the first place. And that's something that Groomed really aims to help with. We want survivors to watch the movie, to understand what happened to them, and to start unpeeling that onion and really, getting to the core of what happened and how they can heal from it. But we also hope that it helps with prevention. We hope that parents watch it, communities watch it, and therefore are able to recognize the signs of grooming when something is going wrong in their communities. They're able to step in quickly and take the child out of the situation. But I also know that watching a movie often isn't enough. And we hear this all the time when we do screenings. People want more afterwards. They want training programs. They want to be able to share something with their colleagues, their families. They want to share this message around what to look for. And they want some tools for their children as well. How can I prepare my child to defend themselves, to make sure this never happens to them? And that's where the Care Center comes in. They have fantastic programs for teaching adults how to recognize the signs, what to do if you find yourself in a situation where you think something is awry. But also they have this fantastic program called ROAR, which teaches children body safety and empowerment. And I really, really hope that you guys are all able to support the Care Center with these programs. I know these are tough times. I know there are a lot of demands on your resources, but I believe these programs are fundamentally important to make sure that we stop sexual abuse from happening. Now, my parents always say that they wish they had seen Groomed 20 years ago, because they always had this weird feeling in their belly that something was wrong with this guy, and they wish they had been taught what to look for and what to do with that feeling, but because they didn't know, they actually let it go and never ended up taking me out of practice, and they regret that. 2 months ago, I became a mom myself. I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl called Charlie. She's the best, I think. And it actually emboldens me in this mission. We need to do this for Charlie, for the boys and girls of her generation. I really want us to make an effort to try and stop sexual abuse from happening. And I really ask you, please consider donating to the Care Center and help them fund these programs and continue these programs, because from the bottom of my heart, I wish they had existed 20 years ago. Thank you for your time.
Wow, Gwen, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing about your experience and for creating Groom so that others may know more about the prevalence of child abuse. She is absolutely right. Child abuse prevention education is fundamentally important to the safety of our children. It's also important to equip children with the tools needed to identify and prevent child abuse. That is exactly what we're doing at the Care Center and why we're asking for your support tonight. In 2019, we educated nearly 15,000 children and adults. And this year, even in the midst of a worldwide pandemic, we've taken the necessary safety precautions that have allowed us to continue our mission. I am thrilled to share that we are currently on track to educate even more children and adults in 2020. We are making a huge difference in this fight, and we hope that you will join us by donating in support of our work tonight. Now I'll pass it over to Care Center CEO and the founder of ROAR, our fearless leader, Stacey McNeeland.
Thank you. And wow, thank you, Gwen. Thank you so much for telling your story and sharing that with us this evening. Survivor to survivor, thank you for your authenticity and your belief in our mission that we should be standing up and we should be fighting for children and the belief that we can end child abuse. Your story was so inspirational and I'll honestly never forget it. I know that all of you in the audience probably feel the same way, that you're like, wow, hey Gwen, that was amazing. I welcome you to Virtual Stand Up for Kids. Those that don't know me, my name is Stacey. I'm the CEO of the Care Center. I want you to think about something for a second. Imagine in your mind the Chesapeake downtown arena, okay? Imagine filling that arena full, packed with children, 38 and a half times. That is the number of abused children in 1 year. That's what we're up against, guys, okay? So you've heard Gwen's story. Many of you know my story, and we hear stories every single day from kids that have suffered the unimaginable, most severe type of abuse. Our team in victim services has been working overtime, nights, weekends, bringing in kids through the COVID pandemic, tackling some of the worst and vile cases that we've ever heard. The severity is definitely up, and COVID is making an impact on families and on social situations for children. I appeal to you now. We've got to dig deep. This by far has been the most challenging year in terms of fundraising opportunities for the Care Center. The difficulties are obvious. We weren't able to have our largest annual event, Brave Ball, and that was a severe cut in revenue. Also, grantors and people that were used to getting generous donations from are having to cut back or repurpose their funding towards pandemic-related costs. And while we have been very blessed, we're still hurting. When we hurt as an organization, you guys, it trickles down to kids. It makes our wait times longer. It makes access to services more difficult. I need you to dig deep tonight and be a passionate supporter of children. That's why you're here, right? You believe in our mission and you believe in helping kids that have suffered the unimaginable. I encourage you, stretch. I'm going to stretch. A typical donation I would make to Stand Up for Kids is $100, and I'm going to double it. And I'm going to challenge you to do the same. Donate, push yourself. I can't tell you how much we will appreciate it. You're literally saving children's lives. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Stacey, and thank you all so much for being here with us tonight to raise awareness and funds for the Care Center. Again, find the link to donate in the chat. All donations are completely tax deductible. To learn more about the Care Center's important work, please visit www.carecenter-okc.org. Thank you again to Gwen for joining us all the way from Holland tonight, and with a new baby at home too. We are so grateful to you for your time and commitment to advocating for children. Now feel free to stick around for a Q&A with Gwen beginning right now. Thank you all very much and have a good evening.
Hi, Gwen. How are you?
Hello, I am good. Still awake.
Still awake, doing well. Okay, well, hi and hello, everyone. Thank you again for attending Stand Up for Kids 2020. I'm Camden Means, Director of Development and Communications. I know I saw some folks were having a hard time hearing the audio. Don't worry, we're going to email this out, the whole recorded program out to you guys later tonight so you can watch the whole thing again. Don't worry about that. Gwen, thank you once again for sharing your incredible story with us. I do want to reiterate to everyone that it is 2 a.m. right in Holland, and you are here with us.
Yeah,
so
1:45.
literally,
But with a
you
small
are.
baby, there is no day or night anyway, so it's
Wow.
all good.
Well, you are literally advocating for children all over the world right now. So thank you very much for that. So when you guys do get that recorded program, just feel free to share that and send it to someone in your life who you think needs to hear it. Such a powerful message about grooming from Gwen. So let's get right into these questions, okay?
And thank you, Camden, again for the invitation and the opportunity to speak.
Absolutely. Okay, we've got some that people submitted on Facebook, so we'll start with those. How did you find the offender you talked to in your documentary, and what was it like to speak with him in person?
Yeah, tough question. So and actually a question that I get quite often. We actually spoke with a number of offenders throughout the process of making Groomed, and we actually went through therapists. We thought that would be a safe way to go about it, to make sure that we would get people in the film that actually are at the right time in their process as well. People that we believed we could trust that they were at a healthy phase in their healing process, and would give us fair answers and would actually want to help. And so that's how we found all of the offenders we spoke with. Ultimately, only one is in the film, and it was, of course, extremely difficult to speak with them. But I also believe very, very strongly that, you know, we can all sit here and read about grooming and read about the process and what we should do. But ultimately, I believe it's the offenders that have the real answers. And so to have somebody who is recovering and really hoping to live a better life and really helping us with prevention and understanding what the process is that he would go through, I found very difficult to hear, but also very empowering at the same time.
Wow. Is it reasonable to think we can really prevent grooming and child abuse?
I think we can. I think we absolutely can prevent child abuse. Do I think it's reasonable that we will eradicate it completely from the world forever? No. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately. However, there are huge obviously this happens all around our communities throughout the US and throughout the world. And I do think if we pick up on the signs, a lot of the time it can be prevented. Now that I've been digging through my own past and meeting with people that were there at the time, people from my swim team, a lot of people actually felt weird about what was going on. Not only my parents did, but also other kids at the swim team, the other coaches. People felt strange about what was going on, but nobody had the tools to really put that weird feeling into something more conceptual. But also people didn't feel safe, didn't know where they could go. And so I think if we give people those tools, I don't think we will prevent all of them, but I think we can catch a lot and at least stop a lot of cases before they get too far. Because that's one thing that I hope I emphasize enough in the presentation. There is a pretty long process actually before anything physically happens a lot of the time, and so you have a window, and not in all cases, but in a lot of cases there is a window where you can actually act before things turn fully the wrong way.
Did you have a background in filmmaking, or did you get into it because you were compelled to share your story?
A little bit of both, actually. It's a good question. So I always had a dream of making documentaries. I've always known that that's what I wanted to do, but it's also an extremely difficult profession to make a livelihood with, and so it's always been more of a hobby. And then when I started to learn about grooming and this whole process started, I decided to take things up a little bit more seriously and make it a bigger project. But it's definitely always been something that I've been passionate about, and I think is a beautiful medium that can really help people, teach people different things and turn things into action.
Well, we are also glad that you followed that passion, because
thank you.
So many folks right now are asking, how can we watch the movie?
Yeah, it was actually a great timing because I found out today. So a little bit of context: the rights for the film were bought a few years back already, early on in the process, by Blumhouse, which is a big production company. And they actually called me a couple of hours ago that they have a buyer for the project. It just went up for sale, and they just found a buyer today. So that's pretty good timing. So I can't share too much about it yet, but it looks like it will be out sometime next year. And maybe we can talk, Camden, on how to make sure that we get the message out there when it's out to the people in your community.
Absolutely. We've got a lot of very interested folks, myself included. Okay, so how will this experience, the experience you had as a child, impact how you raise baby Charlie?
A lot. It's a big question. It's something I struggle with a lot, and something we address in the film. It's actually a reason why I was afraid to have children for a really long time, and in the beginning I didn't really know why, and then after a while I started to put things together and realized I was just afraid that I couldn't protect her or him or her. I didn't know at the time, of course. And so I think it definitely will impact it, but I also feel much more prepared to do so, and I feel pretty secure about it. And of course, I don't know, there's no guarantees, and you can never protect your child fully from the whole world, nor is that what I would want, right? We still have to give them a full life where they can experience the world without too much fear. But I do think I have the tools now to recognize it, and there's actually been quite a number of instances now where both me and other people in my production team have seen situations where our radars go up and we think, hey, something is off here, and act on that, and are able to prevent the situation from happening. It really is preventable and can be visible. So I think it helps a lot, but most importantly for prevention, I want to make sure I empower her to make sure that she feels safe and feels like she's the owner of her body, and it's private. And I'm going to put her in martial arts classes because I was told that helps a lot with just body position and things like that. And so little Charlie will be doing jiu-jitsu or something like that.
Perfect. That answers Stacy's question, our CEO. What's your most important advice to parents regarding protecting their children? So you think it's just educating yourself on the signs and symptoms?
Yeah, I think it's educating yourself as a parent for sure. Raising a confident child. We've heard from almost all, not all, but almost all offenders that they don't like confidence very much because there's too much of a risk that the child will be difficult to influence and might speak up. And so confidence and strength are really important to teach your children, of course. And one thing that it may feel minor, but I found it really eye-opening, is I was told by many people actually throughout the process, throughout multiple stories, that what happens when you ask a child whether something is wrong. So like I said, my parents had that little bit of a feeling in their belly, and a lot of parents do. They just think something is off. And then they will ask the child, is something going on with this person, right? Are they hurting you? Or, there's different ways to phrase the question. And a child that is not being abused will likely just go back to their video game and say, what a weird question, right? Like, why, what? No, of course, teacher X or uncle Y isn't what? But if abuse is happening, especially if grooming is happening, they will go into full defense mode. I did that, and pretty much all the survivors I've spoken with did the same thing. People have written letters to their parents, so angry. How can you even think that that person would ever do X, Y, or Z? Really, really mad. And what happens a lot of the time is parents will think, oh, great, nothing is going, that's what I wanted to hear. That's the answer I was hoping for, that nothing is going on. But actually, that defensiveness is a huge signal that something might be going on. So that's might feel small, but random one that I found very powerful and is very common. So that's an important one to look out for. And then, of course, secrets, making sure that children know the difference between good secrets and bad secrets. Or unhealthy secrets, and make sure that they always feel safe to tell you about any kind of situations that they might find themselves in.
Absolutely. So just paying attention to different behavioral changes.
Yeah, exactly.
And secrets is a big part of the ROAR education program. I will say that. So that's great. And we've got time for a couple more questions. Someone asked, when were you in your ungrooming process? When you were in that process, what was the most difficult moment for you? Was it reading the letters, telling your parents, or something else?
Most difficult. I think the letters were really difficult because they were so confusing, and I really had a few weeks after that where I was almost going to report him, and then I read the letters and I couldn't, and it took a while for me to get back on top and have that ungroomed mind come in again. So that was a very challenging one. Finding out about the other victim was really, really difficult and really empowering at the same time, which feels very strange to say, because of course there's no benefit or upside to there being another victim, but it really helped me get angry, because it's much easier to be angry for someone else. And it made things so clear. But it was also very difficult to hear. So those would probably be the two bigger moments. Also, telling my brother was really hard. He didn't know. So yeah, a couple difficult moments for sure along the way. Many. I'm not crying the whole movie, by the way. When I saw those clips, I was like, oh gosh, that's a lot of crying. There's uplifting moments as well, I promise.
Someone asked, can you speak to how a community or a family is groomed along with the victim?
Yeah, big one that's often overlooked is this grooming process of the family. And sometimes it even happens before the child is groomed at all. So I spoke to one offender who is super deliberate in his process. And he would pick the family. He wouldn't pick the child. He would pick the family. And go for a family that, something was going on. For some reason, the parents were not having as much attention for their children as they usually did. There were some cracks. And so he would identify that family. And only when he started befriending them and the parents and felt like, hey, I have an in here, then would he select the child. So that family foundation is extremely important. And so in my case, like I said, it was very much the offender befriending my family. And that's usually how it goes. Well, what you need to accomplish is that the family feels okay with the offender spending time alone with the child. This is another example where it's quite clear to understand is in church environments. So when there's a priest, for example, there is this embedded trust already there. And so the priest might come to the family's home. There's actually a survivor in our film that was abused in that setting. And the priest would come to his family home and have dinner with them. And that was like a huge thing for the family. The priest is coming to our house, right? And so when the priest would want to go and spend time with the boy, everybody just thought, well, wow, he selected our boy to spend time with, you know. And so it's that kind of process that's very deliberate and painful to see.
That abuse of power really comes into play.
Yeah.
Wow. So we've got one here. This is my son's friends were victims of grooming. We were told that how parents react to their child's brave confession is key to the healing and psychological health of the child. Can you speak to that? How should a caretaker respond?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question and a tough one to answer, but absolutely, that first moment is really important. So when somebody confesses, and I'll just speak from my own experience. I'm not a psychologist either, but what I would say is validate. I think where this goes wrong a lot is the child will finally, find the nerve to tell you something. And then when there's questions or there's doubt, the child will just go straight back into into that corner of silence, I always call it. But it's make sure that the child feels that you do believe them. That's the only thing you really need to say. And it's challenging because, of course, you have your own emotions at that time, for sure. It's incredibly difficult to hear, and that's okay. Like, I'm not saying you can't show your own emotions, you can, but don't forget to tell the child, I believe you, I see you, we will talk about this. What happened in my own case was that my family, I told them, and my dad got very angry, and they did validate me in a way, but then starting the next day, they just never spoke about it again. So this was when I was 17 or 18 when I shared, and then until we started filming, which is 15 years later, 20 years later, we just never talked about it again. And what that teaches, or what it kind of taught me as a child, was, apparently this is not important enough to be talked about. So if mom and dad don't think it's a big deal, then apparently it's not a big deal and he's not that bad a person. And it kind of confirms all those groomed ideas that I had in my mind already. And so I talked to my parents about this throughout the filming process, and they said they didn't want to talk about it because they thought it would be too painful for me. And they thought if she wants to talk about it again, she'll come to us, right? So there's no wrong intentions. But I would say for sure, continue to talk to the child about it, make sure they feel heard and they get help from resources like the care center, and really do find places where they can share.
We'll ask one more question. What would you say to someone who's considering disclosing their abuse for the first time?
Do it. I know that sounds really easy. I know it's not, but I was surprised. I didn't talk about this at all beforehand, and now I've shared quite a lot, and you'll be amazed to see how much support there is out there, how many people have gone through it, how much you can also help other people by sharing and by connecting with others about it. And it's just a huge relief, and often can kick off that process of healing. It definitely isn't a matter of just disclosing and boom, you'll feel better. It takes a while. I'm not going to lie. For me, it was a multi-year process of, getting to the point where I'm at now, where it's not that big a part of my life anymore in that way. But it takes that first step to do it, and it will be okay. I know you feel likely very alone when you haven't shared it, and you'll be surprised how many people are out there wanting to help you.
Absolutely. And to that end, the care centers always an available resource. Visit our website. info@carecenter-okc.org is our direct email address. Our education programs touch on all of the things that Gwen spoke about tonight, all of those tools that help kiddos protect themselves and also help caregivers protect children. Those are all covered in our education programs, and you can find those on our website. Make sure that our programs are in your kiddo's school and that you have that information as well. So it's past 7, so that's all the time we have, Gwen. Thank you so much for everything that you do. We are just so grateful to have had the opportunity to speak with you, and you and I have been chatting this week. You know how excited I've been for our community to hear your story, and I just think you're an incredible person and just such a blessing. So thank you very much. If you haven't already donated, please consider making a gift right now using the link in the Zoom chat. Know that your dollars will stay local. They'll stay right here in Oklahoma County, helping our children who have experienced abuse, need it the most, and they'll help our education programs continue to be free for our schools and our churches and our daycares and all of our other youth serving organizations. We truly believe that children need this information, so please help us continue making that free. Child abuse happens, but with your support, we will continue to fight. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to Gwen. That's all I've got. So good night, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.